And you are now screen sharing, apparently.
Yeah, getting ready to kick off the intro as soon as 3 o'clock rolls around.
Alrighty, and I am going to be right back.
Gentlemen, how's your afternoon?
Pretty good. Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. Been a strange week.
Yeah, there have been a lot of them. All right, I'm going to kick off the intro here. Wave to me if you don't hear it.
Ready, set, go.
Hi, everyone. My name is Robert Mannell. I'm here to host the Do It Live podcast for Autonomy, Season 6. Today, we're going to have Mohammed show us some artwork that he was working on based off of a Q&A session last night. One of the great things about Autonomy is the Q&A sessions where you can bounce ideas around to a whole group of people and get some wisdom from a crowd of like-minded individuals. So something that I really enjoyed through my Autonomy Season 6. And today I want to put a little topic around journalism and the lack of real journalism in today's modern age of bought and paid for everything. So I'd like to share a couple clips with you guys. This first one is an old Simpsons clip, basically showing, mocking the media and how they turn everything into the end of the world scenario. So let me share my screen out and I'll play this for you guys. Here we go.
When cat burglaries start, can mass murderers be far behind? This reporter isn't saying that the burglar is an inhuman monster like the Wolfman, but he very well could be. So, Professor, would you say it's time for everyone to panic? Yes, I would, Ken. Hordes of panicky people seem to be evacuating the town for some unknown reason. Professor, without knowing precisely what the danger is, would you say it's time for our viewers to crack each other's heads open and feast on the goo inside? Yes, I would, Ken.
And that right there is kind of just an overall what the media does for the people. Just take things and you know, basically get you to tune in. I always used to call it like the snowstorm reporting, because every time there was a snowstorm on the East Coast, whether it was like going to be an inch or 3 feet, they would build it up the same way. And I used to be married to someone who would sit there and watch the Weather Channel through that stuff, and I would just mock it and laugh. And it just seems to be like the formula that they've gone with in this day and age to get people to be afraid of everything and their neighbors. And it's concerning when you can't have a conversation with people calmly, rationally. Like as soon as something that isn't what they saw on TV comes up, automatically they seem to get angry. And I don't know where that came from, but I would think that people who've been around the block a few times would realize that when people are trying to divide you for whatever reason, and like, I always hear people say about, history of Nazi Germany, how could people ever let this happen? Basically to saying like, we would never let that happen again. And we would never let that happen here. And then when you see them recycling old propaganda techniques to turn, citizen against citizen, turn a group and dehumanize them and try to rile up public anger and put the blame, shift the blame away from where it belongs onto whatever group of people it is. And everybody always thinks, you know, it's that group until it's the next group. And then next thing you know, it's you. And we really need to drive that home with people who, you know, the people, you can show them data all day and they'll just roll their eyes at you and, you know, think you're crazy, but like just logical arguments over things. I would even say arguments, just analysis of things like that. Like, when has anybody who's ever tried to turn you against somebody been your friend in any situation in your life? A real friend is one who's going to talk things out with you and see both sides and, you know, try to rationalize it and let you know if you're being an ass or if the other person's being an ass or whatever situation. You know, that's what friends really do. When you have people who won't be your friend because you hold a different opinion, it kind of shows you guys really weren't friends to begin with. But I have a few other things I wanted to show off. I have a couple memes from Benny Wills that I'd like to show you guys. Share my screen here. Excuse me while I try to get these controls down. These are the kind of things that just give me a chuckle when I say it, because it's just, you know, logic, you know, like I gave away all my freedom to get my freedom back and I'm still not free, but it's all your fault. So, yeah. And I had another one here somewhere. Kind of a encapsulation of the government, the vaccinated and the unvaccinated in meme form. Kind of sums it up. The vaccinated attacking the unvaccinated while the government's fucking them. So, no, I wanted to give everybody, you know, a chance to chime in, you know, on any type of ideas they have on journalism after I get done with my diatribe here. So I'm 49 years old and I've been paying attention to, you know, politics since I was probably like 20 or so. And it was always like watching when CNN became like a 24 hours news cycle and just watching the whole, like that snowstorm effect I was talking about earlier, where it's like, we're just going to keep showing you the same picture over and over. And then we're going to speculate the hell out of it until it turns into another story. And we're just going to keep doing it for 24 hours until you, you know, pay attention. One of the things that's been so like striking to me is like the blatant outright lies that have easy to debunk by, you know, 5 minutes of internet research that seem to be prevalent, like the whole horse-paced ivermectin thing. And I kind of wonder like what the tipping point will be before people, you know, start to use other sources for their information, or maybe listen to their crazy conspiracy theorist friend who's sending them links to the information that they could read themselves. But I think a lot of that, you know, people's have a worldview. They have a way things are, and like if that's, you know, the cognitive dissonance comes in when, you know, you try to take something outside of their worldview and present it to them, because, you know, most people like to believe in the good of humanity, and I count myself among those people. But the people who would use that against you, it should be obvious. It should be more obvious to people. What do you guys think? Anyone?
I think James Mello has a hot mic and he needs to go first.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I absolutely agree. And my biggest example for that, this might be I don't know what you think about this, but I listen to Dr. Drew and Adam. I listen to that show a lot. And Drew Pinsky is one of those doctors who seems to straddle the fence between the left and the right, or in the dialectic. And he just will not come to grips with anything higher than it's just incompetence, and the system's incompetent, and he doesn't know why these bureaucrats are moving forward. It's unscientific. And he's had this slow fall for the last year because he had COVID himself and actually pushed ivermectin in late in 20, like in December. But it's so frustrating watching the media. They just won't chunk up. They just won't. And he's had McCullough and Dr. Victory and all the people that really came up for alternative treatments. And he just won't chunk up and go to, hey, there's an oppressive force. You just don't see that in the media, and it's very frustrating. It's to hear that as conspiracy, and when you just look in the books, then something bigger's happening.
It has been a real strange 2 years watching the metamorphosis of some online personalities go from, believing the incompetence or just, the greater good comments. And as things have gone on and more information has become available to them, it's really fascinating watching the transformation, like Brett Weinstein and people like Jimmy Dore. And there's I joined Rockfin probably about a year ago, or maybe a little more than that, because of all the free speech being censored for YouTube. And you don't really notice it until it starts happening to the people you're watching, and then when you watch one after the other get chopped, and it's like, what standards are we going by here? I always was under the impression that science was a changing thing, and that people, when they came up with new ideas or new hypotheses, they worked on proving it either right or wrong, and that's how science worked. And you need empirical data to prove things. And it's just crazy, watching the real numbers be misrepresented, and then you could actually go to the CDC's website yourself and see the real numbers, and it's like they just told me something totally different. And how does people don't they want to be able to trust their sources to the point where they don't have to do the research themselves. And I think, me personally, a long time ago, I could see the differences in the propaganda styles from the different media outlets, ones that, say they're liberal, or they don't say, people say they're liberal, and others say, other conservative outlets. And it's they're using the same information and they're coming up with a different conclusion based on the same facts. And I had thought about going into journalism when I was young. I thought that would be something interesting to, find out. My idea of journalism is finding out what people don't want to be known, the power structure. They've always called it, the fourth estate, the guard against the government. And as time has gone on, one of the detractions for me as a young man was it doesn't pay to go out and be a journalist. I mean, unless you're some national talking head, and that really wasn't a thing when I was 20 years old. That's just started, the 24-hour news cycle had just started then. So I just, I'm in disbelief that journalism has progressed from people trying to expose the power structure to cheerleading for it. And it's been slowly deteriorating. And when Trump became president, they always tried to pretend there was some type of objectivity in the media. And then when Trump came along, it exposed to anybody who doesn't play that my side versus the other side game. It should have been a big warning of they're not being a watch guard anymore. They're basically if you watched any CNN, and I used to be subjected to it when I would in the middle of my divorce, I was staying with my brother every other week. We were splitting our house, and he's somebody who was traditionally conservative, who would sit and watch CNN just to yell at the screen. So I had to be subjected to that when I was staying with him, and I just really like, man, it's like some kind of fantasy world. Like like I said, you take 5 minutes to go read some other source or check, what they're saying, and you'll get a totally different story. So I think one of the biggest catalysts for this even being possible is the fact that they were a low-paid, traditionally, industry. And now you have like the Bill Gateses of the world, who's just, some investigative report just found that he spent $319 million on media grants and just buying influence. It's like, I don't know where the disconnect is with people when you know that to be a fact, and then you look at, like, this guy claims to be a philanthropist who's trying to save the world. Like $319 million would build a lot of wells and stabilize food supplies in a lot of places, and this guy's spending it to influence how the media talks about him. I mean, it seems like kind of common sense, but when the information isn't presented and you hear it secondhand, it does sound ridiculous, really. Oh yeah, the richest guy in the world, he's trying to make money off of everybody.
I think it goes back to Mark Pazio's concept of putting people's consciousness in a box, because when we are born into the world, we're born into a narrative that was prepared for us, whether it be religion or politics or money. It's like narrative, just as James Corbett talks about how narrative is the most powerful weapon, because it's like an anime or a video game or a film. You're born into the world and you're given a script. You're giving a model of what the world is. Here's this guy, here's the Pope, here's the president, here are the people that you're supposed to look up to. And anything that contradicts that model will create cognitive dissonance. And now the brain will have to create a new model of what the world actually is.
Yeah, I had actually asked my my oldest brother, who the one I was talking about earlier was conservative, who, like, when I would tell him stuff about 9/11 and show him evidence, he would like mock me, and he would mock me to other people and tell me how crazy it was. And then when this whole COVID thing came along, he would like immediately recognize it, because he knows a lot of nurses, and like while they're telling us on TV that the emergency rooms are overflowing, he has nurse friends who are being sent home because they don't have any patients, working in the emergency room. And it's just like there's a little disconnect there. And as it progressed, like, he realized it. I had been trying to show him like Corbett videos, because there's a lot of stuff out there that I found over the years. It's like, it's ridiculous, and ridiculous for a reason, because they'll use a nugget of truth and then they'll tell you that the reptiles are the reptilians are the ones who are pulling the strings on everything, or just something ridiculous. The earth is flat, or one of many different things that you can easily disprove, but subterfuge. Anybody else have any comments?
Yeah, I think a lot of it really just comes down to economics as well, in that, like, this will be a multi-part thing, but it basically ties back to economics. Economics in the sense that, you have a certain lifestyle you want to maintain, and there's an easy way of maintaining it, and there's no real consequence for not doing that. And so part of this comes back to a thing that was in, like, I think it was 2012, 2011, a video I saw made at the time about, it was like a Colorado mayor or governor who took this like clear bribe. It was like a multi-million-dollar bribe to push some bill through in a certain way. And the guy was pointing out, I was like, well, what's his incentive not to? When he knows that the worst that's going to happen to him from the public is they'll complain for a little bit and then go home, why wouldn't he take that bribe? When he knows that otherwise he's going to have, like, is going to have a very, a relatively low pay and all that sort of stuff. Like he has no incentive not to do it, and that's the people's fault. And I see that for the journalists. I think that's a big factor. Is it's like it reminds me as well, and this is the other related part of it, is this thing that I think I originally heard it from Sibel Edmonds. Like her or hate her, she was a whistleblower, a 9/11 whistleblower, and I think it was her who had mentioned that what whistleblowers tend to, the people whistleblowers tend to be most disappointed in, it isn't their boss for denouncing them and stripping them of their pension stuff. It isn't their family or anything. It's just the people. Is that they'll go through all this crap and they'll put this stuff in front of the people like on a silver platter, and the people will just do nothing with it. And so apparently it can lead to resentment, because this was coming up in a conversation where it was like, I think she was trying to get a couple, I think of their FBI whistleblowers on board to do something, and they didn't want to do it because they were so burned out from this, and they're like, screw the American people, they can all rot in a gutter and all that sort of stuff, because they'd already been through that. And so I think that sort of resentment type thing is actually a big part of the engine that fuels all this. Is that you have people who did in one way or another work very hard. You can include the various elites among this and their families, and I could very easily see a situation where some of them at the very least did try to maybe help other people, and other people themselves are just like, no, I don't want to do that, I just want to do whatever I'm doing. And over time, that resentment could have led to that concept of the useless eaters, and going, well, these people don't care anyway, screw it. And so it kind of like has this incentive to like, well, we're going to keep working hard for ourselves. We'll feed them whatever bullshit they'll take, because clearly they don't care, they're just useless eaters, and screw them, it's their own fault. So I could see the journalism having turned into this as a sort of self-perpetuating engine of some of this resentment. But the biggest factor as well is, well, not the biggest factor, but that it perpetuates itself, and then these people have a lifestyle. Like there's no, like, why would you want to go to a lower lifestyle when there's just no reason to do that? When maybe you have tried in the past, you've heard the stories of those who have tried in the past and that sort of thing. So I don't think there's innocence on any level, in my opinion. I tend to have a rule that basically once someone hits 25 years old, there's a certain set of things that they should probably just know, because it's pretty well guaranteed they have the life experience necessary to know it for a fact. And one of the basic ones is that they don't really have any control. And usually the proof for that is asking them, have you ever had anything go wrong in your life that you didn't like, that continued to happen while you were sitting there not liking it? If yes, then you know that your emotions don't control any of that, and that you don't have any, direct control. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that follows from that. And so if they're continuing to act like they have control, and that their feelings and stuff matter in an objective way after 25, when their brain supposedly is fully developed, that's their fault. And so I think that this sort of resentment engine, and then the economic incentive and lifestyle stuff is pretty much at the root of all of this, in my opinion. So that's all I really have to say for that for now, I guess.
Ryan, I'll see you're 25 and call you at 30 years old. That's a good explanation, but I wanted to extend it out.
It's difficult worrying about your future and thinking that there's someone out there who's not acting in your best interest. I guess that's what, like, the base of what people think government is there for, to act in your best interest. And like Richard says, they don't give you anything they don't take from somebody else first. And it's just it's a matter of do you want to be an adult, or do you want to be a child with overseer to make sure your nose gets wiped when it's runny. Like I was reading an article before the podcast about Joe Biden giving the media a hard time for reporting on his the empty shelves all around the country. And it's like, really, how does that even like make it into the news? Like this guy is telling you not to report on what you're seeing with your own eyes. And like you read into the article and he starts talking about, the supply chain shortages and how you can't, guarantee things around Christmas time. And he's equating it to like the 80s when the Cabbage Patch dolls were like in demand and you couldn't get one kind of thing. And he says only Santa knows. Like, I mean, who are we fucking putting that message to? That's supposed to be like a message written to adults. And, only Santa knows. Like, I mean, that's a crime in journalism, a crime just to have some demented, senile old guy, they put out there as the figurehead. It's something I've noticed. Like, I used to say that it's pro wrestling for adults was politics, because it's like they take like the worst candidates they can find and they bubble up to the top, and they're the only choices that people supposedly have to make, and they both have exact similar policies. And it's like, okay, so what changed from this guy to the last guy? We're still trying to take over the world's resources. We're still taking out any government that doesn't agree with us. It's like my middle brother, who's a liberal, it's funny, listen to the contrast between him and my oldest, was telling me during the summer at a party at his house that, it's great that Trump's out of office because, he was ruining our image on the world stage. And I laughed at him. I was like, really, what image is that? I mean, he just bombed a freaking wedding and killed a bunch of children with a drone bomb. Like, is that the image that is that the best image that we have to go out there for the world? It's like you just take 5 minutes, like I said, to look and see what's going on in the world. It's like, well, why wouldn't they be telling us about all these protests going on in Europe and Australia? I guess the whole class structure is what it is. I think it's becoming, with journalists getting paid off to read their scripts, and they're being put into the echelon of celebrity / leaders of this shit show. So I think most people have some fantasy idea that the people are really looking out for everybody's best interest. And it doesn't take too long to see like climate change, for instance. Like the crime that's going on is they're killing everything with glyphosate. It's going to be in the atmosphere and raining down on the planet for 50 years if they stop using it today. So to say that carbon is the problem and the solution is to fucking make people pay for it, it's like what part of that is like logical? So if we pay to use the carbon, then it's still there, right? Isn't that the problem? Yeah, it's like the people who have been raping and pillaging the world are the ones gathering in conferences telling us how we're the problem and they're going to fix it. So, all right, my rant.
It seems to me like the whole carbon argument about we have to capture all the carbon. We're going to use carbon credits in order to regulate how much is used by social engineering. It's really just a setup to create unintentional or intentional consequences that they can then come in and add and present some other solution. So they're the carbon, the argument about carbon is all just, I think, another slippery slope, a bridge, if you will, to some other solution that they want to bring out. Because everybody knows that's just going to screw up the entire global economy even worse. Everybody with a half a brain, anyways.
Well, that brings up.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, in a lot of these cases, though, we've got to remember that these guys have had hundreds of years of psychological operations and experimentation to draw from. That is the information that's essentially occulted from the average person. Most people don't have any clue as to how their behavior is influenced and how much of their behavior is outside of their control. You know, our subconscious mind controls most of our behavior, probably like 99% of it. And that's all stuff that's really beyond what we think about. And you know, being that we don't have the time, you know, really because they keep us busy and keep us distracted to ever really examine what our beliefs are, we end up just believing things that, you know, kind of come along and are conditioned into us repeatedly through the things like the media, you know. And so like being able to understand like how influential things like movies and TV shows and news is when it comes to our behavior, we don't have time to examine those things, whereas they, you know, have got these things down to a, you know, a precise instrument. And then on top of that, you know, you've got a population that's been traumatized, and really, you know, a lot of the traditions that we've adopted over the past 100 years are simply things that, you know, allow really the parents to traumatize their own children, you know, for the system, you know, and then of course send them into the institutions. But I think these things, it comes down to two things, you know. It's really the understanding of the extent of the psychological operations that are going on and how that's influenced our behavior. And then the second is, you know, the fiat currency and the fiat currency system and how it allows them to corrupt every single thing and every single institution, and you know, fund things like endless wars. You know, it's no you know, it's no surprise that World War I came along right after the Fed came into existence, you know, and they started being able to print fiat money and really supply both sides with endless amounts of cash that ends up, you know, really destroying the, you know, the population of both sides.
Pretty much. I want to add on one little addendum or observation of some of this, where it's like people, you know, people believe that, you know, government stuff is there to protect them and everything, and that reminds me of a phenomenon that I've seen quite a bit of for people who are religious, where when bad things happen, like when good things happen to them, it's great. When bad things happen to them, they're the groups. Like, now, I think of this more of a cognitive group, not necessarily any particular religion, but like the style thing. They're the groups who tend to go, but what's going on? I don't understand. You know, did I do something wrong? And then they have to like reframe it. I was like, oh yeah, it must be a test. There must be a reason for this, and like they'll do that. And I think that's a big part of what keeps a lot of people just not looking, not so much not looking at at evidence, but like they force themselves to reframe it in this, quite frankly, quite outright psychotic way, because it just has nothing to do with reality. But it's like they need to still believe that there's this thing out there that is protecting them, because in my opinion, it's like, you know, they haven't really gotten to that point where they really want to stand on their own as an adult, essentially. I'm using adult more in a sort of mental cognitive stance, obviously, but yeah, that's something that I think is a big part of why it's been so difficult for so many people. And it's also a big part of why I, for example, don't think of myself as a good person or a bad person or anything. I'm just some guy, and things are just sort of the way they are. You know, things are what they are, type of thing. And that's not a good statement or bad statement. It's just trying to see what's really there. Because if I were to put myself on either side and say, no, there really is this sort of division line, that opens me up to all of those cognitive traps. That opens me up to being someone who would not look at evidence as much as I might have otherwise. And so it's, you know, I consider that a really big component of this. So I figure that's an extension of like just some of what other people have said. But I do think Michael really has it good, where he's saying like, this has been like hundreds of years this has been going on. This This isn't something that, they just came up with 20 years ago in the last generation. So it's the cycle has been pretty deeply embedded.
Well, look at public speaking, for example. Public speaking skills for people that have them and they have similar kind of technical skills. Someone that can represent themselves with decent communication skills earns about 3 times as much as that same person, with similar technical skills. That should be, and the thing is the fact that we have this fear of public speaking that is conditioned into us. It's not something that is inherent when we're born, but at some point we become so afraid that we will give up essentially that opportunity to earn 3 times as much money because we're afraid. And that in itself is kind of one of the things that, the logical choice would be, if I want to make more money, I just need to communicate better. But the problem is, there's that fear that keeps it out of the way. And then of course there's all this condition and programming and stuff, a lot of the institutions and things, like when you go to school and you get up in front of your class and you do something and everybody laughs at you, and then these things become ingrained in that experience. And other people, and of course the movies and everything else, continue to remind you of those things. That fear becomes so solidified in kind of creating the limitation of what your behavior is, that you're just not going to cross that boundary. And I think that's kind of a lot of things, that we're seeing, when it comes to the information that we're learning in autonomy, and still how difficult it is to like tune ourselves and change ourselves so that we can adopt an abundant lifestyle. It's not easy. And you all can see it, you can all witness it in our experiences, that it's difficult to change our behavior.
I think it's it's the psychological training that you get when you do go to like the public school system, and they mock people who are intelligent, and they basically celebrate acting dumb. The sillier, more outrageous and dumb you are, the more popular you are in the school world. And it's like they're not setting up an environment for achievement. They're setting up an environment that is trying to condition people not to try to, to flee, jump out of the jar, basically. Train your fleas, like John Taylor Gatto.
John Taylor Gatto for me was definitely one that made a difference, because it once I heard him and once I read a couple of his books, it did certainly, demonstrate like how this whole system is screwed up. I remember I was in 5th grade. I spent practically all of 5th grade sitting next to the teacher because I was a smart ass, and so he basically had to be like arm's length distance from me so he could grab me and say, hey, just don't say that, shut up, or whatever. And then that always continued throughout, like you're saying, Rob, the people that like ask questions or go, hey, that doesn't make sense, are constantly ridiculed and kind of beaten down. And I can tell you in the military, they tell you who wants to be a hero, and if anybody says, yeah, I want to be a hero, get down and beat your face. And they will continue to make that like the worst thing you could possibly think of. They occasionally, like when they first get you started, they ask for volunteers, and then they send them on the shittiest possible jobs that you could ever imagine.
I remember that from Navy boot camp, that they, you know, had the people who they had volunteer to do things, and they gave them shitty things to do, and they would tell them that's what you get for volunteering, or
Yeah.
something silly along those lines. It's like, wow.
Yeah, and you know, the same thing in the business world. You know, I was a guy that I got lucky, and I had a couple different things happen in my favor, and I was able to, you know, really demonstrate some, you know, huge business success. And everybody that was above me, all my bosses and all the executives and stuff, they were afraid of me because they thought they were going to take my job. So they were constantly trying to stab me in the back one way or another to keep me from making, you know, even though like they're in my organization, they didn't want me to look too good, you know, because I might take their job. And so you know, it's a systematic thing that we've got, and it does derive from the fiat system. And this is certainly something that if we can work together and, you know, kind of reestablish, like, what are the things that are valuable, what are the things that are high quality of life enhancing, those are the valuable things. And usually those aren't the things that people are paying for. You know, they're paying for all the things that are going in the opposite direction, and they're certainly paying for, you know, harmful behavior. You know, the police, the army, you know, all these you know, government officials and stuff like that. You know, they're all getting paid, but they're all, you know, screwing the hell out of their constituents.
Yeah, I think that's the power of that, is to be one of the chosen ones, so to speak, where you're in those positions of authority, and like if you don't follow that, then you're out on the street with the rest of the slaves. And I think that really plays a big role in getting people to enforce things that they know, you know, morally are reprehensible, and, you know, things that don't align with their own values. And I think, you know, we're pretty much conditioned not to stand out in society. And if you want to be successful in like politics or something, like you can't have your own ideas. You have to stick to whatever, you know, party line that you're joining, and compromise all your integrity. So I think, you know, there's really no way to get the money out of that system, unfortunately. But bringing everybody up with a better education is really the only way, because I see like one of the biggest problems I've seen since I attended high school and, you know, the school system is like the communist indoctrination that has started, you know, Common Core curriculums and critical race theory, and, you know, things that are, you know, level setting everybody at a very low level, low intellectual self-defense abilities. And like you were mentioning, like public speaking is like the biggest fear. I think there was somebody had said that, you know, people would rather be in the casket than giving the speech at the funeral. So I mean, it's something that I've had to overcome. I've spoke in front of people before, but it's never been something that I was comfortable with. And, you know, you get used to certain situations. Like I'm a team lead where I work, so I hold meetings with my team and, you know, divvy out assignments and stuff. So it's it's an interesting world, I'd say.
Well, that just speaks to your ability to communicate. You know, you're the one that can communicate with the other team members and essentially have the plan to you know, get them to do the things, or understand what needs to be done. That's what probably puts you in that position. You know, I'm sure the technical skills are probably relatively similar, but it's that, you know, it's the communication skills plus that desire to like be that person, you know, that puts you on the top, puts you in that position. And I do want to mention that the hierarchy, the system that we have, that is kind of the corporate model and the model of control, as far as, the boss being in charge and the little guys being the slaves, is that way because it is easily controlled. It is a very weak organizational system that's easy to corrupt. And that's why that's all we've been taught as far as organization is that way. And that's why, every single system that's out there, every single business that's out there is very easy to turn.
Well, they also have, what is it, the Signature Select program or something of a similar name. Maybe I'm getting it wrong, where, intelligence has 60,000 people working within private industry, academia, and, they're basically covert intelligence people steering, different industries. And like everybody, Operation Mockingbird is pretty common knowledge to any of us. I mean, I say things like that to the so-called normies and people look at me like I'm crazy. I was talking to my girlfriend's niece over Thanksgiving, and she wants to be an FBI criminal profiler. And I started asking her, you're not going to be like one of those FBI agents that has somebody build a bomb and then bring it to terrorists like they did at the World Trade Center the first time. And she's like, what? And I just rolled off a couple of the FBI's tricks, like setting up mentally ill people to be the fall guy for whatever scheme. And the whole Michigan governor, where like 5 of the people in the circle were FBI people, and they were the ones who were like encouraging the other people to do the whole scheme. So it's like, yeah, it's definitely not something they're teaching anybody.
What did she say to that, Rob?
What did she say to that?
Did she go any further with you or ask you any questions?
She shut down and said, I just want to be a criminal profiler. I forget that, maybe that's not the exact term she said, but she wants to be one of those people who does the profiles on the criminals, I guess. So
she wants to be the one that helps them find us.
I should have pointed her in the right direction, right? It's like, if you want to find the criminals,
told her some autonomy.
Should have told her, if you want to know the criminals, just get that org chart from the Congress, and they're the ones.
Should have asked her to define criminal.
I'm on orders to be on my best behavior around the family, because somebody always inevitably asks or mentions some of like the hysteria going on, and I don't always keep my mouth shut. So I was told I'm not allowed to spark conversation at family gatherings, so I just kind of do it on an individual basis, ask people things. Like, there was also a woman there who was 89 years old. She was a friend of my girlfriend's mother, and she's from Latvia. And I love to talk to people who come from areas like that, who've like experienced what communism is. And she's like, people just don't see it, but it's happening here. Yeah, good luck getting that message out, because if you bring it up, they're gonna yell at you.
Now that would have been your in. Getting her to just start telling stories about what she was growing up and what she had to deal with. That would have been epic.
Yeah, something tells me people wouldn't have been gathering around. So does anybody else? Go ahead,
I have a question.
Sure.
For everyone, but especially you, Michael, because your expertise, from what I know, lies in like organization, like making like organizations, like organizational theory. So like this whole conversation about hierarchy really got me thinking about really the origins of it, because hierarchy is such an old legacy meme of humanity. And so we have these legacy models, these legacy models by which we understand the world around us, which aren't really that natural or not or that efficient. So it got me thinking about the idea of hierarchy as myth, because hierarchy is not only a reality of our shared history, but it's also mythologized through story and through story and mythologies of the past. So I have to wonder if the world were different, or if we were to invent something new, like what could be, how would we build a new model by organize our understanding of reality? Because as we're talking about, as you guys are talking about hierarchy, what came is a great chain of being, which is this idea that rulership, like kings and queens, they're on this ladder, and the rocks are the very bottom of the ladder, and humans are like the masses are like right above that. So that's it. Just this whole conversation just got me thinking about the legacy models by which we perceive and organize the world, and what new ones we can make and build. I think it ties back into what Robert's talking about, how people fall into this popular narrative because it's the model, it's the narrative, the world with which they're given. And to give them information that contradicts that model, they will have to then build a new model in their minds of how reality actually works.
Yeah, well, I do think it's not that difficult, and it is certainly something that we can experiment with, but I would say that it is right under our noses in a lot of cases, because there are a lot of things that people respond to really quickly that can change things. I do feel like we've got this unnatural kind of expectation. Bob's thing coming up here, harmony enhancement, this idea that we should expect to be in harmony. Harmony is how things work, and how, like, we know, like, look at nature. Nature is in harmony. I mean, there's just all kinds of things going on, but nevertheless, everything is taken care of. We can do the same thing, but we've been so conditioned and domesticated to expect disharmony and look at like the wrong things that we get these bad results because that's what we expect. There are like the Ubuntu model, the idea that when somebody does something wrong, that instead of us trying to punish them, we just we all gather around and point out the good characteristics, the good things that they've done, and remind them of the power that they have, and that they are loved, because a lot of the reason that people act out and do bad things is because they're not getting the attention they need. Everybody really down deep wants to be loved. This is something that Bob Podolsky talks about in his soul bonding stuff. But inherently we want to be loved, and if we can't get love, we want to be recognized. And if we can't get recognized, then we want attention. And if we can't get attention for doing good things, we'll get attention for doing bad things. And that's kind of where we're at, is like people are doing bad things, we're doing bad things, because we can't communicate, and there's nobody listening to us, and there's nobody, like the way that we need to be loved, the way that our communities need to function to love each other has been taken away from us, and so a lot of these things that we should be really familiar with. I mean, this is why one of the reasons I love living in Mexico, because they still have strong families, man. That they have good families where they've been loved their whole life, and like you see how these people interact, and it's in harmony. There is no conflict. That and then they love getting together. It's like, man, you can't hold them. You can't tell them not to get together. You can't, you say, you could give them $100,000 and say, hey, can you get, there's this job for this other thing, but it's going to be during your family reunion. Hell no, I'm going to the family reunion, and that kind of, that kind of bond with others is something that, you know, the Western world has totally decimated. And it's definitely, I think, something that we can use to, you know, to change things. And I do feel like once you expose people to that kind of experience, you know, it may take a little bit of time because it is foreign, but if you know, practice it for a short period of time, it does make a difference. You know, I ran construction jobs, and you know, construction jobs are generally highly contentious. You know, there's a lot of a lot of disharmony going on. People are constantly screwing with each other. They're constantly stepping on top of each other. They're you know, doing damage to each other's work and stuff, you know, just to kind of get their stuff done. And then, you know, but when we got into a harmonious kind of relationship where I got people to work together and talk to each other and kind of respect each other, man, we were pumping out work like 3 times normal. And when I would get like the bankers and the architects and stuff to come down and review my job site, and you know, this is what they do every single day. They'd come to my job site and they'd be like, what in the hell is going on here, man? This place is like a freaking dreamland, you know? Because it was so strange. But I know it's possible. I know it's
How many
possible.
years have you been down in Mexico, Mike?
I'm going on my 7th year now.
Awesome. What was the catalyst that initially got you to go?
Anarchapulco, 2015.
Okay.
I came down for Anarchapulco. And I had no idea I would be staying here more than 2 weeks. And we got to 2 weeks and we decided to stay a little longer, and I haven't left since.
Have you been to all the Anarchapulcos since then?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I pretty much am, you know, I've been involved in all of them.
I think I just heard about it like 3 years ago. So I'm hoping one day I'll be able to get there if they don't shut off travel for unvaccinated people. But I guess I could always sneak across the border.
Yeah, you can always sneak across the border. Don't let them fool you.
Hey, Rob.
Yes, sir.
Do you mind if I share something that relates to what Mike was talking about?
Sure.
Okay, because this is something I was thinking about earlier, and I really wanted to share it. This has to do with the game Kingdom Hearts, but it's very, very much relevant to this conversation that we're having. All right.
Muhammad, man, I don't know why, but your voice sounds unusually low today. Just wanted to throw that out.
Yes, I was noticing that as well. I was like, is that the same person? And I had to like flip the screen to see it was
Now, I don't know if it's a different mic or you've got some distortion on.
It's probably my deep voice.
Nice.
All right, you guys see my screen, right? Okay, so just in a nutshell, Kingdom Hearts is a Japanese role-playing game that contains a lot of hermetic symbolism that combines the worlds of Final Fantasy and Disney and many other worlds. It's a story of metafiction that suggests that any and all worlds conceivably exist within it. And so this design right here is from the first level of the game called the Station of Awakening. And given that this game contains a lot of hermetic symbolism, if you look closely, you can see the hermetic flower of life on the 8 principles of natural law. And within the design of the Station Awakening, firstly, the Station Awakening exists within every person's heart within this game's universe. And every Station Awakening has the hermetic flower of life, the 8 principles of natural law. And the designers at Square Enix, they used these circles within their frames to represent the things that are held most dear to that person. So this character right here, Sora, he's the main character of the game. And within his flower of life are the things that he cares about, his friends, Riku and Kairi, and Donald and Goofy, because Donald and Sora, they go on a journey to save the universe, basically. But the reason why I shared this was because Kingdom Hearts, the general theme of Kingdom Hearts is friendship and care. and care is the eighth principle, the lost principle of natural law. And Sora is a character that the audience get into his shoes as he's going on this journey to save all these worlds and all these characters spread across the universe. And what I find interesting is that the designers at Square Enix, they found a way to visually represent like the spiritual and like ethereal nature of love and care, of the heart itself. And they even use the symbolism from Hermeticism to do that. But it's not only a visual graphic, it's an actual level. It's level design, character design, graphic design. It's a place that the player actually goes to. So I found it interesting that as we're talking about these legacy models by which we view reality, I saw this as an example, as a good example of how love and care can be visualized and be turned into something that is experienced like in the form of a video game. Like the designers basically found a way to visually represent the nature of the heart itself using symbolism found in Hermeticism. That's all.
Cool. Do you want to present your drawing? You ready for that?
If that's okay with you, you're the host, so.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. I'll put some context behind it. During last night's Q&A session after the lecture, Mohammed had an issue that he brought up, and after everybody spitballed a bunch of ideas, we came up with him creating an anime. Was it going to be of Agnieszka, or I was a little late.
Profile picture.
It was a little late for me. So let's see what you got.
I do have it. Yeah, I just want to get you guys' thoughts on it. And I also made the modifications to her hair, Agnieszka, so you'll see that too.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah, cool. That's
It
awesome.
It didn't take me long.
Really, that's really good, especially to do in a day.
Yeah, definitely.
The eyes are incredible.
I thought you were biting off more than you could chew when you promised that by today's Do It Live. It's like, wow.
You're a man of your word, Charlie Brown. Well played.
Love it.
I bet she'll buy that too.
If she wants.
Let's see if she's got a response.
I saw her on here, so maybe get some feedback. Might be passive listening.
Muhammad, the eyes are incredible. Is that a style, or is that your own style? Just in the eyes, the way it conveys the emotion.
Yeah, that's my own style.
Yeah, they're popping. Like it. All right. All right, now I kind of went out of order here, but I'm going to go over the weekly highlights. Last night's lecture was titled Turning Pixels into Profits, and it was a great lecture built upon the previous lectures, and actually showed a lot of great ideas for using affiliates and basically getting your offer out to the public, different ways that you could do that. And let's say, what else do I got here? So another thing that's going on is JL is hosting a watch party of the Trust game tonight, I believe at 9 p.m. Eastern time or sometime around then. Don't quote me on that. Just had another episode of Liberty Radio that came out. Did anybody get a chance to catch that? Guess nobody on the call. I thought Phoenix was on this as one of the hosts. I hope he caught it.
Yeah, I think he just popped back in.
Okay. Hey, Phoenix, can you hear us? All right, I won't chase him down any further.
I was just gonna
Yeah, my
comment
phone
on.
just
There you go.
Okay. How did the Liberty Radio go this week? I haven't had a chance to catch it. I guess he's.
Say again, you last?
You keep muting, and I can't hear you.
Say again, what was the question?
Oh, it was how did the weekly Liberty Radio broadcast go?
It was a good time. Covered a lot of relatively timely subjects. We had missed a week, so kind of just pulled some of the stories from that week and the upcoming week and just kind of meshed it all together.
Okay.
Although next week's is going to be fun. I finished an interview the other day with Jack Lloyd from Voluntarism or the Voluntarist comic, and him and his wife Fo. They live down in Florida, and they've been releasing a bunch of new music videos and stuff. They just did one called "Disobey," and the video is pretty freaking awesome. It's so much fun, and they're working on 2 more songs. "I Do Not Consent," "Florida Man," and I was able to convince him to debut the next video on GTW Liberty Radio, so that's cool.
That's awesome. Great work.
And then I'm headed to LA right now, and I've got to I'm dropping off this load in LA, picking up a load, and directly heading to Miami, which gives me the opportunity to interview Tatiana Moroz in person instead of having to wait. So I've been trying to arrange it to do it over the internet, and it just hasn't been happening. And she was traveling a lot, and now she's going to be in Miami. I'm going to be in Miami, and it'll be perfect.
Nice. Stars aligning.
There's been a lot of wins lately. We just picked up another affiliate as well. I was putting out one of my boss, he had a van available. So I put out a little advertisement. Hey, you guys want to see the world? You want to take all your stuff, dump it in storage, rent for storage, and do some van life, make some money? Hit me up. My boss has got a van available. And one of the guys from New Hampshire, Chris Wade, he was like, no. And I noticed that he was online. Pardon. Goddamn Omicron, whatever. So he's online, and I'm like, oh, this guy, because he sells de-Googled phones. So I hit him up, and I was like, hey, you still have any of the phones? And we started talking about the phones, and we got to talking about how he does his marketing. And we moved back onto the phones a little bit after marketing. And I was like, finally, okay, how much, send me an invoice for the phone. And I was like, by any chance, would you be amenable to like maybe 50% off on the phone for say like 6 months worth of advertising on the show? And he was like, yeah, absolutely. So I essentially sold $132 worth of advertising trying to buy a phone. And yeah, it was basically just got it free. So, I mean, I'm still paying half price, but at the same time, I made the same amount of money and got a new affiliate.
That's awesome.
Or he sells routers and VPNs and stuff, like VPN built with routers with built-in VPNs and such. We're going to be doing a like 30 to 45-second commercial. I got to work that up sometime this weekend. So once I finally make it to LA, and I'll probably be hanging out over with LD for a bit. At least that's the plan for right now. Gotta make some time to work on that commercial.
That sounds great. Great way to, I think you gave him substantial value for what he's paying for it. So he's probably going to get that at least 10, 20 times over what he's investing. So
I hope so. I mean, I wasn't really sure how to value the amount of advertising that we get. Like, I have no clue what the going rate is for advertising within, what is it per click or whatnot. but value, the beauty about value is its subjectivity. And he was like, yeah, I totally value 6 months of advertising on your show for $132 off of this phone. So not only did I get a de-Googled black phone for half price, but provided him a little bit of value and maybe even be able to develop something else down the road, because we also got an affiliate link for him as well.
It's awesome. Last night's lecture was very good with information on that type of thing, how you would set up offers with affiliates, and how to, I mean, it's kind of one of those things where you have to know the business, the value, what you're offering. But I think, just, the failures, fail forward, and you'll get to that point where you find out what the value is and what you're offering. And I think that's one of the great things about autonomy. This previous Sunday, after our question and answer session, Richard was able to join us in the dojo and practice the integration exercises. So that was a highlight to get live feedback from Richard on the different sales techniques people were trying.
I wanted to mention something from the lecture last night. As a matter of fact, just in general, I'm a season 2 guy, and I've been through pretty much every single season at this point. In fact, I've been through them a couple more times because I did some of the questions. I was on the question team with the Agnostica's question team, as far as developing the questions for the front and the back end of the course, and the questions for the Q&A breakout sessions and stuff. But I'm telling you, at 6 times through this course, I'm really starting to grab some information here. And I feel like if it's not working for you, you just got to keep at it, because there's just so much information here, and sometimes it seems overwhelming, but there is so much good solid information. And that is also part of the problem that we face, is that we've been conditioned, and we've got to uncondition ourselves by reconditioning ourselves. And so, like, going through this course multiple times is how we recondition ourselves. And I do feel that is working. I think one of the things I heard last night that I hadn't heard before was that, that idea of courage and vulnerability, and how those two are related to each other. The fact that, you can kind of admit the things that are going wrong, or the things that you're failing at. A lot of people don't really want to. I mean, that idea of failing is pretty tough for a lot of people. I know I'm kind of the guy that I'll stick my neck out there, and I'll do some stuff and look like a fool and fail. And I guess that's why I've always kind of been the black sheep, is because a lot of people don't like to do that, and like if they're on something I'm doing, and they see some kind of failure, they're like, oh, whoa, I don't want to be associated with that. But it is that, like, being able to go through that is really an incredible learning experience. And I do feel like, that's one of the things that's made me has given me as much wisdom as I have, is because I've, been knocked down a whole bunch of times, and a lot of bad things have happened. And, I don't let it stop me. And, man, I gotta say, again, I'm just so thrilled to be a part of this. And, it's why I'm trying to be involved in everything I can, and be here for all you guys if you need anything, because I do believe in this thing, and I know it works, and I know it, that we're just really getting started. And you know, every season it just keeps getting better. You know, the amount of people that we're getting, the amount of engagement we're getting, the things that are going on, the ideas that are coming out. It's all good stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Like being like one of the older people, I guess, joining the course at 49. I've been relatively successful in my career, just, working hard, getting my way up and changing jobs at the right time so I don't get stuck in a place that traps me. And a lot of the lectures in autonomy that I've been, I mean, there's still a couple left to go, but the ones I've been through, it's like there's so much stuff in there that I've had to use and never realized exactly what it was. And like the techniques, it was just kind of, had to think on the fly kind of thing. And it's really great to have that all put into like a organized kind of format and be able to work through and say, okay, that's why that worked for me and that's why that didn't work for me kind of thing. So I really love that part of it. And one of my goals with doing autonomy was to prepare myself with the tools that I may be undeveloped in or not have at all to move towards my own business and take that leap, because I've always been able to move up in my current career. So I've kind of got to the point where I'm either going into like management, which doesn't really excite me, or going to be stuck as an engineer the rest of my life. So I kind of think that this will help me get that. So I've already come up with a few ideas. Some of them are a lot harder to develop than others. Like one, for instance, was to create some like e-learning type of things to teach people who want to get into IT, like the things you really need to learn, and not some test that they're teaching you to get a certificate that's going to get you laughed at in an interview. The problem with that is that's going to take a long time to develop, and I'm kind of starting fresh, and I'm not afraid of doing the work. It's just, I know that that's not going to be my very next step. So there's other things like, starting like a small business to do, IT consulting, or to do like small business networks and computing type of stuff. So I definitely getting a lot of ideas. And having the the community with just so many people with so many great ideas and being able to bounce that off of people is probably one of those valuable parts of the course, is that interaction with everybody. And then having Richard on the question and answer session. So if you have something that some part of the lecture you're not quite getting, he's there. So it's it's not just a recorded play whenever you want it kind of thing. I think it definitely benefits you to be at the actual live lecture, because you have questions you may have at that moment, you can write down and relay them in one of the two different question and answer sessions. But when you're just watching it, say on Monday, after all that's gone, like you may have questions that just don't get addressed. So definitely the highlights. What else we got? Well, I just had a phone call come in for something, but I have to put that aside for now. So does anybody else have any comments about the week in autonomy? Any highlights I may have missed?
I hate trying to, I mean, I don't want to dominate the things, but I just wanted to mention a couple things that I don't think we mentioned in prior ones, but the Great Books Club, it meets on Saturdays, every other Saturday. And at the moment we're off for December, but we're going to crank it back up in January, and we're going to start on Aristotle. But that's been going on for a couple years now, and you know, there's kind of a small dedicated group, but we've basically reviewed all the great books and all the great philosophers, or essentially the great books. You know, it is really kind of the basis for, you know, modern civilization's philosophical roots. And, you know, we just made it through Plato, which I think took us about a year to go through all the works of Plato. But as far as an understanding of like what Muhammad was talking about is kind of the psychology behind how they've, you know, kind of pieced this thing together with the rationale that they have behind why they do things. It's a great understanding of what's behind all this. And I do feel like, you know, I have a much greater understanding of the system and kind of the thinking behind the, you know, behind the veil, because we've had these, you know, we've not only read the stuff, but then we've had a discussion, you know, and we've talked about, you know, like, how does this relate? What is this, you know, this thing in the book? And then like, what are they doing out here? You know, and having that chance to really, you know, do that comparison, it does a great deal of good. Daniel and his wife are really the ones that run it, and they do a great job, and they're so well read, and they're young, and they're you know, they got a great deal of potential, and so I just like to give kudos to them.
That sounds great. I've always wanted to get into Plato's work and stuff like that. I got to do that soon. Logic is logic is logic, you know.
How do you jump into that call? How do you know where they are in the book? And Mike, do you have any information on that? How can I just get the book, join in?
I think it's on the calendar, but I think you have to get on the Discord through Daniel McCarthy. Message him or message me, and I'll get you hooked up.
Thank you.
Was there any other things that people doing this week?
I just wanted to share one more thing. I mean, it had to do with Kingdom Hearts, but not from earlier this week. But I wanted to talk more about the Station of Awakening, and the idea of helping people grind up a new pair of glasses through which to see the world in a different way. Because as someone's been a fan of Kingdom Hearts since I was 7 years old, and being a part of the fandom, I see how a work like that has affected other people on an emotional and spiritual level. And they themselves shared this story of how this work impacted their lives. And so one thing I think it's powerful as it relates to what we were talking about earlier about hierarchy, legacy model, is that through a work like Kingdom Hearts, as a result of, you know, the Station of Awakening being designed and being a thing within the game, it in turn has inspired other fans to recreate that same design, but through their own fan art. So the idea here is that you have people who are engaging with culture, who are engaging with story. They're taking something from that story and they're reproducing it as fan art. And through that process, it's kind of like art and entertainment as teaching tool, because this design from this game contains this esoteric symbolism, and fans already have this emotional investment to the story. And so through fans creating a reproduction of that same design from that game, they're kind of like, they are already emotionally involved in the process of creating this imagery, even though they don't know what it means, but they are part of that creation process. So I was thinking, if we want to teach people the idea of autonomy, I mean, autonomy is a program that already exists, but what other ways could we teach people to learn about autonomy? Through creation, through creating things, like through the process of creating things, they learn what autonomy is through the emotional and physical process, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that there's probably a lot of different ways I mean, with my children, I know there's just, you know, subtle things that I'm telling them, but I think I've been telling them things about the government their whole life. So anybody else have any comments? All right, I guess we will wrap it up then.
I was too slow to, yeah,
Okay.
I've jumped it. I was
Dave, go ahead.
slow putting myself out of the mute. Good evening, everyone. Great conversation here I can see, and I have a couple of things that I noticed. One was ringing me a bell with the notion of vulnerability and courage, and that would be what I found here in autonomy course is that doing so, or making my impression on it, my take on it, would be somewhere where I would be kicked by life, I would say itself, like life is correcting me by me making myself vulnerable out there, and that was only possible by me putting myself on the path of evolving. Yeah, and it is very nice to see this growth out of and really learning process out of making myself vulnerable and being courageous in taking responsibility for my decision, which will be either quitting versus specifically talking myself into action or out of some actions, different actions, and yeah, and seeing that and choosing, okay, now, and really being mindful to the point where I could see what I am I and can ask a question, am I talking myself out of something right now, or am I doing the opposite? So that was like big plus for me, and also having this, what was I wanted to emphasize that point of which Rob made, that we can relate to that knowledge, because I wanted also to appreciate this course, because here I am kind of reminded and it is myself, but I can see that the course have this great different ways for us humans to conduct our business around the world, and this is great. Like in every freedom loving people will be on the point when they will be able and will have all parts in place. It is good place also for that, for conducting our business, and I mean money also, which is great, and exceptional improvement in behaving and like conducting myself into day-to-day life with new people, and some old people, from people that I do know for many of years, and I'm able to stop, to assess, to came up with the question, to fail, to learn, and this is great. And this is the nice part. And I wanted to read you and to translate you from Polish dictionary. What is autonomy in accordance to Polish dictionary from Wikipedia? And it is ability to have norms set by ourselves. And we have this one word, like self, it's hard to translate for me. Maybe Agnieszka could help with this, samodzielność. Yeah, it really helps with that, and it's going along with the trivium and with the great exemplary men that I have chance to meet and see work of. Thank you.
Samodzielność would be like independent action. It really, like literal just translation would be independent action, right?
Exactly.
So how did you feel about, did you like your avatar, Agnieszka?
Yeah, I thought she was really cool. I really liked the doctor robe. I asked him to do something like a doctor or whatever, and he did that pretty cool, like very fantasy-like. I love it.
Yeah, I was trying to go for something like the antithesis to allopathic. Like if you're a naturopathic doctor, then you have to wear, you'll probably wear warm colors and to connect to your patient. So I want to kind of,
Nice.
express that.
Nice, good job, thank you.
Okay, does anybody else have any input from the week's autonomy activities?
Well, the only other thing I'd like to add is that Michael should get ready because we're leaving and going to the beach in a few minutes.
Good for
That's,
you.
That's besides the point.
Awesome. All right. Well, that's all for this week's Do It Live Autonomy podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and thank you to all the guests today for their input. And join us next week. But first, make sure you subscribe to the podcast on YouTube so you never miss an episode. And if you want to know how to get autonomy, go to getautonomy.info and tell them Rob sent you. And you all have a great rest of your weekend.
You too, Rob. Good job today.
Nice, good job.
You handled it very well.
Everyone.
Thank you. Great job.
Great job. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm still thinking of that word in Polish. Like, is there a better translation? Like self-efficacy, but it's not efficacy, right? Because it's action. It's actual action. And I don't know if there's a word in English that's, because samo is like the beginning. Samo means independent, like self-sufficiency, self-efficacy, all of that, right? But the second part is action, right? So to work, to do, right? So what do you do? I don't know.